Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Wokingham Borough Council's executive. I'm Stephen Conway. I'm the leader of the council and executive member for housing and partnerships, and I'll be chairing the meeting. Do you please ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off? And if you are participating via Teams, as I see some people will be this evening, when you're not speaking, could you please mute your microphones? Please also note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. I want to introduce the number of people here this evening. In the back row over there, we have a set of officers starting over nearest the door. There's no significance to that at all. George, he's not about to depart, I think. George Framlico, who is the Director of Place and Growth. And next to him is Matt Pope, who's the Executive Director for Children's Adult Services and Public Health. I think I got that right. Then Sally Watkins, who's the Chief Operating Officer. Melanie Allen from Council's Comms. Then behind me, we have Liam Oliffe and Priya Patel from Democratic Services. Then we have Andrew Moulton, who's the the Council's Monitoring Officer. Then the Chief Executive, Susan Parsonage. And last but not least, we have Graham Ebers, who's the Council's Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Finance Officer. Now, I'm not going to introduce my colleagues. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start over on this side this month with Rachel.
Good evening, I'm Rachel Bishop Firth. I'm the Executive Member for Equalities, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty.
Good evening, my name is Paul Fishwig. I'm the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways.
My name is Clive Jones. I'm the Executive Member for Business and Economic Development.
Good evening, I'm Prue Bray and I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council and the Lead Member for Children's Services.
I've introduced myself.
Oh, right, okay. My name is Imogen Shepherd-Bay and I'm the Executive Member for Finance.
Good evening, I'm Ian Shenton, Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kerr. I'm the Executive Member for Climate Emergency and Resident Services.
Good evening, I'm David Hare. I'm Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Wellbeing.
Thank you, everyone. Now we move on to apologies for absence. I think we have only one apology that I'm aware of, and that's Lindsay Ferris, who is unfortunately ill and not able to join us this evening. If we can move then onto the next item on our agenda, minutes of the previous meeting. Are we able to confirm these as an accurate record? The meeting held on the 28th of September. Would somebody like to propose them? Proposes. We have Paul seconding. Those in favour? Thank you. That's everyone. That's excellent. We now move on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest relating to any of the items we have on this evening's agenda? I think not. Thank you. So we now move on to item 58. That's a statement from me in my capacity as the leader of the council. And I do this month have a statement I'd like to make. I've spoken many times now about the serious financial challenges facing the council. Inflation, high interest rates and increasing demand, especially for children's and adult services, are putting our finances under unprecedented pressure. Our historical underfunding by central government, I'm sure you're now familiar with this, we receive less core funding than any comparable council per head of population in England. That underfunding by central government only makes the difficult situation more challenging still. The government's funding formula, based primarily on an assessment of levels of deprivation, takes totally inadequate account of the costs of meeting our statutory obligations, especially in children's and adult services. But extremely challenging though the situation undoubtedly is, we have good reasons to distinguish ourselves from those councils, and sadly the list of them grows, that have to declare effective insolvency. Our situation is not the same as theirs. Thanks to the excellent work of our very experienced Chief Finance Officer and his colleagues in the finance team, the Council has a much higher level of reserves of all types to tide us over these difficult times than is the case with many councils. Our level of net indebtedness is lower than others. We have a highly effective internal audit process. We have a strong working relationship between senior officers and executive members here in Wokingham, based on honesty and mutual respect. In most of those councils that have found themselves unable to cope, a breakdown in the relationship between senior officers and councillors has been a contributory cause. The current executive has shown a willingness to take tough decisions to balance the books, tough decisions that have been shied away from in other local authorities. And perhaps most importantly of all, we are fortunate to have, at all levels of the organisation, impressive and dedicated officers whose hard work and sense of public service makes Wokingham such a strong council. We will continue to face considerable financial challenges, but we should draw both comfort and confidence from what we have been able to achieve together. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 59 in the agenda, which is public question time. And Peter White is with us this evening online, I think. Peter, good evening, Peter. It's good to see you again. I hope you're well.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Everything okay with you?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Good, good. Would you like to ask your question of Ian Shenton?
Yes. So the Berkshire Nature Recovery Strategy is made up of many stakeholders, including the University of Reading, Crown Estate, Environment Agency and others. We have delegated our future ecology to this group, something that affects us all. What is the democratic process here? How will the steering group be accountable to residents? And what recourse is there if the process is seen to be unfairly apportioning biodiversity remediation to some areas of the county at the expense of others?
Thank you, Peter. The key aim of the Berkshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy is to enhance biodiversity in the county, recognising that more can be achieved through focused action and a collaborative approach across the wider geographical area. The BLNRS, if I could shorten it, is being developed in line with the regulations and guidelines issued by national government. The Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead have been appointed as the responsible authority for its completion, and Wokingham Borough Council is a statutory supporting authority. The regulations set out specific review points where supporting authorities can object to elements of the developing strategy should they consider them to be unfair or wrong. The responsible authority has created a steering group listing its members on the strategy website, and the Wokingham Borough Council Ecology Officer is a member of the steering group. The steering group are tasked with advising throughout the process on how to make it fair and representative of the priorities for the whole of Berkshire. The responsible authority has created working groups on different aspects of the strategy development and is seeking participation from a wide range of stakeholders. It will be consulting across Berkshire to understand residents' priorities and check that it is mapping these appropriately. It's tasked by the guidance to consult as broadly as possible and to seek to engage with hard-to-reach communities, and the process is expected to be as inclusive as possible. And I would like to encourage as many people as possible to get involved in the strategy's development by engaging with the project officer for the responsible authority and having their priorities for nature recovery fully included.
Thank you, Ian. Peter, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. So a community deliberative process around climate define the borough's ideal future state. A relevant section states, our community would breathe clean air and enjoy clean and green biodiverse spaces. The reality for many of us is an environment constantly being built on. Continual urbanisation is our reality. Can Woking Borough Council describe how the Berkshire Nature Recovery Strategy and Woking Borough Council's presence on the steering group helps take us from our current state to this ideal?
I'm sorry, the sound quality in here is bad, so I didn't get some of that. What I would say is that I have an open offer from the senior officer to have a discussion with you and go through all the details of the strategy if you would like me to arrange that.
Peter, would you be happy to have that meeting? I think it would probably be valuable for everyone.
I would, yes.
Thank you. Well, we will arrange that for you. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Peter. Okay, that's the last of the public questions, and we now move on to item 60, which is member question time. And we have two, and I think they're both from councillors who are joining us online. The first is from Gary Cowan. Good evening, Gary.
Oh, good evening.
How are you? Are you okay?
Well, I'm a bit like Lazarus. I'm spending so much time in the Royal Berks. I hope I have a better outcome than he did.
Well, I'm sure you will. And I don't think he'd spent any time in the Royal Berks, as far as I'm aware. But anyway, so would you like to ask the question in your name, Gary?
Ask the question standing in my name.
Well, that saved us a lot of time. You're going through it and reading it out. Thank you. And this one is to Imogen.
Good evening, Gary. I'm pleased that your question recognises that the council's financial situation is challenging and that we do need to make millions of pounds worth of savings. In order to make those savings, we are looking at every aspect of the council's budget, at innovation and at transformation. We believe we are in better shape than many councils are to weather the storm. When it comes to the specific areas mentioned in your question, I must dispute some of your assumptions. Car parking usage has increased month on month since the charges were revised, and there's no indication that any change is having a negative effect on the footfall in our towns or any direct impact on local businesses. I'm afraid that for some, it is too easy to blame Woking Borough Council if they have a problem. I accept times are tough on the high street, but the blame for our economic problems all round needs to be laid squarely on this current government. You also mentioned litter bins, leisure centres and various related services. All of these items are still under review, and you must wait for the outcome of the review processes that we have in place before you make judgments. A much more complete picture as to where our savings will be made will appear when the detailed budget goes to the overview and scrutiny committees over the next few weeks. Those meetings can be watched online, and I would encourage you and other councillors, and indeed members of the public, to view them if you want to get the fullest possible picture of the budget.
Thank you, Imogen. Gary, I'm sure you've got a supplementary question.
Well, yes. Thank you, Stephen. I believe that to manage the scenario we're in, residents should be told exactly what all the non-statutory services the council provides and their running costs. The reason I say that is residents should be consulted on all these services, and not just the ones that the executive think they should be consulted on. I mean, for example, should residents have a say in whether they reduce other non-statutory services, which could be libraries or weights and measures, and other ones that we don't know are non-statutory, or keep the borough clean and tidy, or let become unkempt and messy and dirty. So my question is, will the administration provide a simple public list of all the non-statutory services the council administers and the costs in running these services, so residents can see what real options they could have and not just the ones the ones that have been selected. Thank you.
Hi, Gary. I mean, I have a list of all the statutory services, but it's very sort of high level. Unfortunately, you know, we have a statutory service and we do extra things on top of that. And, you know, it's one of the benefits that we have, such as, I mean, litter picking. We are required to keep the area tidy, the roads and streets and parks and everything tidy, but it doesn't specify what that involves, how often we pick litter and things like that. So there's too much flexibility in there for it to be that specific. But I could certainly give you a list of statutory services if you want. Thank you.
Thanks, Imogen. Thank you, Gary.
That would be very helpful, and thank you, Imogen. I'd like that.
Thanks,
No
Gary.
worries.
We'll try and make sure you get that. Phil Cunnington, you're the next councillor to ask a question. Evening, Phil. I hope all is well with you.
Good evening. Yes, recovering from COVID. Thank you.
Oh, right. Oh, dear.
So anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. Can I ask a question, please, of the executive member for Environment, Sport and Leisure? What reassurances can you give squash players about their future at St Crispin's Leisure Centre?
Thank you, Phil. The consultation on the future use of St Crispin's was completed in September. An analysis of the findings, together with further analysis of the demand for future school usage of the centre, is now being finalised. The executive at its meeting in November will be presented with a report of those findings, setting out recommendations for the future use of St Crispin's Leisure Centre. At this stage, no specific assurance can be provided regarding future use of the site, as that would predetermine the November executive decision. However, I can reassure the squash players that their submissions to the consultation will be fully taken into account alongside all other submissions. Putting that into perspective, I would stress that we placed at least as much emphasis on comments within submissions as on numerical indications, because our consultations are neither referenda nor market research studies with balanced samples. The qualitative responses are therefore at least as important as the quantitative results. In this case, I suspect probably more so.
Thanks, Ian. Phil, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. I take it from your answer, Ian, that the consultation will be one of the lead drivers in the decision-making process that the executive will undertake with regards to this. Now, I understand already, as you've said on a number of occasions before, that finance is not at the core of these questions. So, can we be assured that a public facility, no matter how you decide that it will be going forwards, a public facility will remain available for the breadth of users that it has at the moment?
As I said, Phil, I can't predetermine the outcome of the executive decision because the paper has not been completed yet. The report has not been completed yet. The asset will be used for the benefit of the community, and it will continue to be used for the benefit of the community. I think that's probably all I can say without trying to predetermine the outcome of the executive report.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Phil, for your question.
Yes, thank you.
We now move on to item 61 on the agenda. This is the proposed approach for the Street, Scene and Grounds Maintenance Service Review, and you can find this on page 21, starting on page 21 of your agenda. And I'm first of all going to invite Ian, as the executive member responsible for this area, to introduce this item. And then I'm going to invite Chris Johnson, who's the chair of the Corporate and Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which looked at this matter in great detail, to present the committee's findings and recommendations. So Ian, first of all.
Thank you, Stephen. The report sets out proposed changes to some of the services carried out under the street cleansing and grounds maintenance contracts. The changes largely affect frequency and stem from the pressing need to make savings within the revenue budget. The report has been compiled following a public consultation that has been to overview and scrutiny, which added valuable input. I would not be presenting these proposals at all were it not for the deliberate and systematic impoverishment of WBC and similar councils by our incompetent government. This has taken the form of 10 years of council tax being capped below inflation, removal of the revenue support grant, and demanding from Wokingham a far greater percentage of the business rates that we collect than is taken from the average council. And yet our own Conservative opposition continues to support their insidious government to promote it, to replicate its policies locally, and above all, to fill their party's coffers with their subscriptions and donations, all to the detriment of the residents that they supposedly represent, and all without a single murmur of dissent. But before discussion of the report, I will offer the cautionary note that I just referred to in answer to Phil's question. The Council's consultations are neither referenda nor statistically balanced samples of the borough's demographics. They're qualitative rather than quantitative, their value lying within the detailed comments of individual responses, which have informed the proposals today.
Thank you, Ian. So welcome, Chris. Thank you very much for coming to join us this evening and presenting to us the findings of your committee and its recommendations. So over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this to the executive. So the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee met on the 2nd of October to discuss the, get the right wording, proposed approach for the street cleaning and grounds maintenance and review. This was an overarching review with a financial aim to save the council money. The committee discussed all the topics, some quite vehemently and some with dissent, but we did come to an agreement at the end of the day that all of the items proposed in the service reductions on pages 10 and 11 of the Overview Scrutiny Committee report be approved. The other outside item on this is the waste collection and public bins. The committee decided unanimously to hold back on emptying the bins, on the frequency of emptying bins and reduction of litter bins until such time as the task and finish group could make a fuller investigation of the options and the methods that we could engage with other parish councils, town councils, and with businesses, and also to bring some education towards that we will be requesting that we put a task and finish group together. Our plan is to start that process off later in this year and going into the following year, 23-24, sorry, with a view to engaging with the officers, to look at the options that are available and to make a proper and sound assessment for the council and for the public.
Thank you very much, Chris. So just in essence, you decided to approve most of the proposed savings, but not proposed saving relating to litter bins and the frequency of emptying some. So you recommended that was not implemented, but you set up a task and finish group to look into ways in which savings might be made.
Yeah, we've made this decision based on the outcome of the consultation that took place, that we found was very broad in its concepts. It wasn't just a straightforward A or B option, and the public did engage with us, and it was a quality response. And from that, we have determined that the public would like better thoughts put around the bin waste bin collection and facilities. We also took it within our conversation that there are some members of the public that are confused about which bins belong to WBC. Not everything in the Wokingham Borough is responsibility of the council. There are lots of people that live on estates that haven't been adopted, that have litter bins in places in the parks, etc. That are the responsibility of the local agents to deal with. But the view or the impression that everybody gets is that every bin is the responsibility of Wokingham Borough Council. So maybe one of the items that we'll be looking for in the task and finishing group is how we engage with these other organisations, those that might be the councils, those that are private entities, etc., and to look at how this is dealt with.
So your recommendation essentially, this task and finish group provides the opportunity to look in more detail at what the options are and to consider all sorts of different ways of tackling this problem.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Prue, Ray, my colleague, was at this meeting and witnessed this. So I think she wishes to say something on this item.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Yes, I was indeed the exec member who went to the Owen.
Chris, could you just turn your mic off while others are speaking? Thanks.
Yeah, so I was the exec member that went to the meeting for that discussion. It was in some ways a new experience for the committee because you're being asked to feed into our meeting and you were coming tonight to talk to us. I thought you chaired it very well, I have to say. Well, congratulations, it was well done. Some of it was quite difficult. What happened was a very good consideration of all the issues, including a recognition of the need to look further at litter bins in the future, as you've just outlined in the task and finish group. And you can see all that reflected in the minutes, which we have seen now. We've started, this is a new kind of idea that we've started as an executive, to have the chairs of the overview and scrutiny committees come and talk to us about the things they've discussed. I think it's a good innovation. We've done it before on homeschool transport, which I obviously was the exec member responsible for, but we've also done it for the, let me get this right, the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. Is that the thing? And where Alan Neil came to talk about it, and obviously Andrew came for the homeschool transport. I think it adds to our meeting and our discussion to have the opportunity to talk to you about it, and for you to present it in a way that's better than just having the written word. So I think it's something we should continue to do. And although I felt quite grilled at that committee, I would like to thank you and the committee for looking at it thoroughly, and for your recommendations. And as I say, I think it adds to the process and it's something we should be doing in the future.
Thank you very much for that, Prue. I would endorse all of those sentiments, especially about constructive engagement between the executive and overview and scrutiny. I'm certainly very keen, as I think we all are, that there is a constructive partnership between overview and scrutiny committees and the executive so that we work together in a way that adds value to these processes. And I think the examples you've given really clearly demonstrate that's possible. And I think our discussion this evening demonstrates further that it's possible. Okay. I'm going to now ask if there are any questions anyone wants to ask of Chris. David first and then Sarah.
Sorry. Thank you, Chris. I think you've answered my question, but I just want to confirm that you're looking for this the task and finish group. The timescale of it is to start before Christmas or before the New Year, certainly, and then to work out what it's going to do and so on in 2024. Is that right?
Thank you, David. Yes, this isn't going to be a short 3-month, 2-month process. This is going to be quite a lengthy process because there is a lot to take on board. There's a lot of different stakeholders to engage with, the parish councils, the town councils, the businesses, etc. And there are lots of options that we want to explore. And it's not just a case of taking what the officers are bringing to the table for us to discuss. It is also about the feedback from our own inquiries, or from the task and finish groups inquiries, to feed back into there and to gel together and produce something. So it's going to be something I imagine that will go well into 2024. It's not something that we will achieve before May. And the other items in there will be that we do also have to engage with the private landlords, effectively, the leaseholders of the estates, etc., because they also have a part to play in this, because we can't be cleaning up, the council can't be cleaning up after them because it's at our cost, it's not at the taxpayers' cost. It shouldn't be. But yes, it's a good 8 to 10 months or more.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. Sarah.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to get clarification on the strategic outputs and outcomes from the Task and Finish group. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the output is to produce a report that you would bring back to executive for further consideration with a list of options of various efficiencies and cost savings and the different options that we could look at. Is that what you're looking to do with this Task and Finish group?
Thanks, Sue. Yes, most definitely. It is a case of not looking and being tunnel vision and looking for one aim, although the aim is to save the council money. That is the overarching aim, but there are different ways of achieving that. And it may be that instead of just reducing services, we can combine services. There are all sorts of options that are out there, and we do want to explore that properly and bring those options to the executive to make a decision.
Thank you, Chris. That sounds very encouraging. Clive wanted to just make a brief comment as well, I think.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Chris, I just wanted to say that I've watched some of the corporate and community overview and scrutiny meetings that you've chaired, and I think you've done an absolutely fantastic job. And you making sure that the committee concentrates on the overview aspect of your committee's work is going to be really very, very helpful to the council. So thank you very much. You've done really well.
Thanks, Clive. I think we'd all endorse that. And I'd like to add my thanks to Clive's and Prue's for the work that your committee has done on this. It's an important subject, and you've obviously considered it carefully. By setting up this Task and Finish group, I think you offer a way forward for the council that will enable us to, I hope, reach some a satisfactory conclusion on this matter. So thank you very much. I think we now, as an executive, need to make some decisions. I think Rachel wants to say something.
Super, thank you very much. I just wanted to make a comment about the consultation exercise itself, because consultation is incredibly important so that our residents can raise issues, particularly about how things that we are proposing are going to affect them. So a perceptive comment from just one resident can make a real difference to how we approach things. Very often they've got a hyperlocal observation. They understand what effect things could have in their particular corner of their ward. They might be specialists at the area that we're looking at, or they could have a point about how a proposal could affect a particular group within our community. So parents, for example, or people who use wheelchairs. So quality comments really do count. And when we're looking at the result of a consultation, we do look at the content of the comments made, not the number of comments made. So it's and Ian referred to this earlier. It's not a vote. It's not a referendum. We really are looking at the quality.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Well, we have had sight of the consultation responses ourselves, and we know what the report from Overview and Scrutiny says. We know of its recommendations, and now I think we have a full understanding of the basis on which they made those recommendations. If no one wants to add anything further, I think we can go to the recommendations on page 21, which I won't read them all out. They're there in your agenda, but the ones to focus on are effectively we're being asked to approve Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee's recommendations relating to not implementing the reduction of litter bins and frequency of emptying bins, but implementing the other service reductions that were considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and have recommended that we do proceed with those. And also we should note the decision to set up this Task and Finish group, which is charged with considering the question about how savings could be secured on litter bins, looking at a variety of options that the executive has not yet considered. And so we're looking forward to seeing the report in due course from the Task and Finish group and its recommendations, so we can then, I hope, be able to choose between different options you're able to recommend to us. So thank you very much, Chris, again.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So could we move to a vote on the recommendations on page 21? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to item 62 on your agenda, which is the customer experience strategy. And you'll have to move on in your agenda to page 61. And this is going to be presented by Sarah.
Thank you, Stephen. I just wanted to say that until now, there hasn't been a customer experience strategy. This is the first one for this authority, which means until this point, there hasn't been a vision or ambition to support strategic outcomes of the council plan in this area. So it is fantastic that we're in a position to present this. And I firstly wanted to thank officers. In particular, I have to mention Jackie Whitney, who's leading on this. And it's an absolute privilege to work with Jackie. She's really driven this. She gets it. Really passionate about this. And having a look at the strategy as well, it's a real example of best practice as to how strategies should look. It's a real masterclass in a jargon-free, customer-facing language, which I think is really, really important. You'll have all seen it, but just just to highlight, this is setting the vision, and the vision is to put our customers and community at the heart of all we do. We are, as an organisation, here for our customers, our residents, people coming into the borough, working here, and this is the reason why the council exists, and it's really important that we put them at the heart of what we do. And the ambition, which is in this strategy, to get the basics right and improve the experience customers have when they interact with us. This has been through a huge amount of consultation and work with residents, businesses, community groups, and even internally in the council as well. And there was 12 months of work in actually developing the draft before it then went out to consultation, which again, we've taken that qualitative feedback to have what we have in front of us. And a lot of the tweaks have been around language, just making sure we've got that absolutely right. But what customers have told us is that there's 4 key things they want us to focus on: to feel listened to, that they're able to get what they need, that they trust in the council to spend money wisely, and feel valued as a customer. And that is inherent to this strategy. We know that there are pockets of excellence in the council when it comes to the customer experience, and I get some really good feedback, but we know it's not consistent yet. And this is about the customer experience not just being owned by the customer service team, but being owned across the entire organisation. And we have started making some steps to further implement this. I mean, there is a year 1 action plan is already written and is underway, but we've done some stuff around the performance management. You'll know in Stephen, in housing, that we're actually looking at measuring the customer experience as part of our corporate KPIs. So we're looking at that qualitative side of things, and we have a lot more of those corporate KPIs now measuring this. This is a real priority for us. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to say anything more because I'm sure there's some questions that people have about this.
Very helpful introduction to this, Sarah, and it's an immensely important piece of work, as you've just indicated, and I want to second your thanks to the officers, and particularly Jackie Whitney, for the work that's been put into this. And I want to thank you too for your championing of this and work on it, which has been very, very, very important in making sure it comes forward. So this is all looking extremely good. I don't know, is there any questions from any colleagues? David, you wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Sarah. Obviously involved in the strategy is the website. And website, in fact, is probably one of the main ways we interact with people. And it's a new website. Can you give me a brief update on where we are with this and how it's going forward?
Yes, absolutely. So the new website was launched in the summer, and it's made a huge difference. So in order to improve the customer experience, the digital experience people have is really important. It's not the only experience, and it is recognised that not everybody can or wants to interact with us in that way. But what we don't want to do is have a poor digital experience that forces people to use other ways of contacting us that are actually more expensive for us as well. So having those digital experiences as good quality is really important. And the website is a key part of that. It's an iterative process. So what we've launched is still ongoing. So when it first launched, we were getting some absolutely fantastic feedback, and we're continuing to grow and evolve that based on further feedback that we're getting. And we will be moving to some of the other parts of it and portals to continue that improvement. But the feedback we're getting is absolutely fantastic. We know that it is more accessible, so we have had users with visual impairment use it and said it's one of the best sites that they've used. Accessibility has been really, really key. And our digital lead on this is something she's really passionate about and really champions. So it's fantastic that's been recognised. But we do measure the customer experience through our website, and the feedback is definitely going up and in the right direction. It's been a real success.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Any other questions, anyone? Rachel.
Super, thank you. I think this is a fantastic piece of work, Sarah, and I really appreciate everything that's been done to pick up the real pockets of excellence and to make that the normal standard within the council. I think that is great. And I'm really pleased to see the really explicit commitment to equality and diversity and inclusion, and the input from class to get us an accessible document. I thought that was great. We know that there are some groups of residents within the community who can have additional barriers to accessing information and accessing services. So those with English as a second language, for example, people who've got limited literacy, and we still have a considerable number of residents who aren't internet users. And I was just wondering what steps we're taking to make sure that access to council information, therefore services, is going to be fully accessible to everybody.
Well, I mean, just following on from what I was saying in response to David's question, by having that improvement in digital services, it actually frees up resource to then engage with residents that struggle using those digital services. And this is very much about ensuring that everyone has access. I mean, I just wanted to highlight, and you briefly mentioned it there, that this strategy actually has its own easy read version that was written in conjunction with CLASP. And it's absolutely brilliant. It is just plain English. And I mean, the actual strategy is really clear and easy. And then this goes one step further. And I think using this as an example of best practice, we should be doing this with everything that we produce as an organisation. I still do read things that I'm thinking, I don't understand this. And it is very easy to get into council speak if we're not careful. So I think utilising this as a benchmark for everything else across the organisation, and I think us as executive in each of our respective areas are part of that and checking and making sure that's happening.
Yes, acronyms are a particular favourite of council documents, and sometimes bewildering to all concerned. I wanted to really say something about involvement of CLASP, which I think is a brilliant idea, and I think CLASP could profitably be involved, I think, in helping us with our documents more generally. Clive, you indicated you wanted to say something.
Just want to be very quick, Stephen. Sarah, I just wanted to say thank you to you and to Sally and to Jackie Whitney for bringing the first ever customer experience strategy to the council. And you wouldn't think that the first ever one is coming here in 2023, but really well done for spending so many months working really hard on this and coming up with something that will help us.
It'll help residents and
residents,
which is the main thing. But yes, thanks, Clive. That's absolutely right. I think we all want to thank you, Sarah, and all the officers involved. Okay, can we move then to the recommendation on page 61 of the agenda, which is to approve this draft customer experience strategy. Those in favour, please show. And that's everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to item 63 on the agenda. This is the affordable housing rent setting policy, and this is on page 89, starts on page 89 of your agenda. And I think this comes to me to present this as in my role as executive member for housing. And I don't think we need to be a long time on this item because it is essentially procedural. We're not making a decision on the level of council rent, which will be determined during the budget setting process. And that'll be determined after consultation with the Tenant and Landlord Improvement Panel, TLIP. At this point, all we're doing is agreeing the policy for setting the rent. So this isn't the setting of the rent, it's the policy for the setting of the rent. Now, we considered a similar agenda item at this time last year. The policy has not changed. It's exactly the same. So I suggest that we don't really need to have any debate on this matter. We can move to the recommendation on page 89 unless anyone wants to ask a question. That's a slight surprise. Two people do want to ask questions.
I just want to make a point, which I think that we don't need to do this every year, do we? We can make a decision.
And in future, I think we will be doing it less frequently because it is, as I said, purely procedural. We don't really need to come back every year to reaffirm a rent setting policy that is unchanged. So we're looking to consider bringing this back much less frequently. Unless, of course, there is a change, in which case we would bring it to executive. Rachel, you also wanted to say something, I think.
Yes, mine is a comment rather than a question. This item is about the council process on rent setting, but I just wanted to make a comment about the context, really, from a fighting poverty point of view. So if our residents can't afford secure and affordable housing, they can't keep themselves out of poverty. And we're seeing an increasing number of people in this country who are working hard, who are doing all of the right things, but they just can't afford the cost of basic essentials. And unaffordable housing is a huge part of that. So this week we've seen some quite frightening figures published nationally. So 1 in 5 UK households with children is now in serious financial difficulties. 1 million children live in families which can't afford to keep them adequately fed, housed, warm and clean. And these numbers have doubled during the last 5 years of this Conservative government. So we need to ensure that we keep the housing revenue account, which funds the social housing, in a healthy condition. And I really appreciate the balance that has been struck in this paper between that and keeping the rents as affordable as possible for our residents. And there is a commitment on page 91 that I just wanted to highlight, which is to look at opportunities to minimise rent increases, and that commitment has been made to our residents. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. That is all absolutely correct. Social rental housing in particular is much needed. We live in an area where market housing is inaccessible to many people. And the only way we can actually enable people to have the basic decent right of a home with a roof over their head is ensuring that we have enough social housing available for them. And that's a challenge, but we will do our best to meet it. But keeping the HRA housing revenue account, go back to a conversation about acronyms, the housing revenue account in a healthy state is vital, not only to the current residents of our social housing properties, but to future generations. If the housing revenue account is unsustainable in the long term, then we cannot offer accommodation in the future. So it's a balancing act, as you said. But decisions over the rent are another matter. This is simply the rent setting policy. So I think could we all move to a vote on the recommendation on page 89? Thank you very much, everyone. There, thank you. So we now move on to page 109 on your agenda, and this is revenue monitoring for quarter 2, 2023-24, and this is Imogen.
Okay, yes. This report is all about quarter 2 of the financial year of the revenue budget. It comes with 3 recommendations. The first is to note our overall position Sadly, we have forecasted an overspend of 3.6 million, but we still have half a year to go with opportunities to manage this. This overspend is largely due to inflation, which is still above predicted levels, and the increase in demand for statutory care services, particularly in children's services. Children's services have a huge financial pressures in managing the home to school transport. Much of it has been driven by long-term failures to provide enough places for children with special educational needs and children who are being forced to attend schools that are a long way out of the Woking Borough area. We are tackling this longer term by building more schools locally, but for now, across all of our school transport, we have rising fuel and wages affecting the overall transport costs. We also had to find unplanned support for our care leavers and the cost to cover the increasing demands of our adult social care services. Other areas with similar overspends, mainly due to inflation, less take-up of our leisure facilities, particularly in the classes for elderly and disabled people, and delays in implementing car parking charges. If you're having trouble understanding why inflation is such a problem for this council, I particularly draw your attention to the chart on page 110, which illustrates how bad this problem has become. However, I am confident that we will continue to find a way forward. Do you want to talk about? Should I go on to recommendation 2 or should we talk about recommendation 1?
No, you go on to recommendation 2. Say what you need to say about the recommendation, then I'll ask if any colleagues want to say anything.
Recommendation 2 is to note the update on our energy procurement contract. This was the move to the laser framework to ensure that we have more flexibility with our tariff pricing and that we have more opportunities for the purchase of green energy. After monitoring, the pricing is expected to achieve a saving for the council. The finalised contract has now been agreed with Laser and the contract is expected to commence in April 2024. Recommendation 3 is to ask for a supplementary estimate of £86,000 in 23-24 for contract procurement costs. There are 2 contracts that are up for either for renewal or extension in 2026, one for waste collection and the other is for street cleaning. Specialist procurement expertise is needed to support this work, so some funding has been requested so this work can start this year. That's it.
Thank you very much, Imogen. It's slightly unfortunate how many contracts we have coming up for renewal in 2026. It's not great for phasing. So I think Prue wants to say something in relation, I think, to children's services.
Yes. So demand is high and increasing in more or less in all aspects of what's, on the social care side and on the SEND side and everywhere. But we are working on projects. I mean, Imogen described the SEND schools and so on, but we're also working on transformation projects. We brought in some resource to look at how we do things. We've got a number of changes to our IT systems coming. We've got changes to the way we're set up. All sorts of things going on which will make a longer term difference. But I'm not going to pretend it's not easy, but there are ways forward and there are things we can do. So it's not a case of despairing, oh dear, it's all out of control. It's being looked at very seriously and we're changing how we work to try and improve things. So I'm reasonably confident in the long term. There's a little bit of a sticky patch in the middle while we move to it.
Well, taking steps that ensure a better future by making investments now that will produce savings later is a really important thing to do. I'm quite sure of that. Okay, thank you, Imogen. Are there any other points anyone wants to make on the revenue monitoring? I don't think I see anyone. Okay, can we go to the recommendations on page 109 of your agenda? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Thanks very much. The next item is also for Imogen, and this is the capital monitoring for the same period, Q2 2023-24, and this is on page 125 of your agenda. And Imogen, over to you again.
Okay, no problem. This report comes with 3 recommendations for the executive, the first being the position of the capital programme at the end of Q2. This capital programme budget is for projects, building work and tangible things. In this case, it is good news report as we were able to take 2.3 million out of our predicted spend. Many of these savings are from road and building projects. This work is often funded from money provided by developers in the form of S106 or Community Infrastructure Levy, and much of the rest of this money is borrowed. If we don't have to borrow the money, this is a good thing, as it reduces our overall amount of interest that the council has to pay. Recommendation 2 is to note the carry forwards. These are projects that have been delayed to later time periods or have been spread out so that their funding is not needed immediately. Recommendation 3 is to approve a supplementary budget of the 175,000 for the pedestrian and cycleway in the Haysbrook Suitable Alternative Natural Green Space in Arborfield. This is to be entirely funded by S106 contributions, which is developer funding that cannot be used for anything else. It has to be used on this particular project. So let's use it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Imogen. And as we've now you presented on these two reports, the revenue monitoring, the capital monitoring, I think it's appropriate for me to say a big thank you to you for the work you've been putting in on our finances, and also, of course, Graham and the finance team for all the splendid work they've been doing. As I said in my introductory comments, this is the most challenging of financial backgrounds I think the council has ever had to encounter. And we are fortunate that we've got such good people working hard to make sure that we get through this difficult period. So thank you very much, Imogen, and thank you, Graham. Okay, can we move to a vote on the capital monitoring report? This is on page 125. You'll see the recommendations. Can I ask those in favour to show? Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the final item on our agenda, item 66, the Ruscombe Neighbourhood Plan, which you'll find the report on this starts on page 133 of your agenda. Now, Lindsay Ferris, as the executive member for planning and the local plan, would have been presenting this in the ordinary course of events, but as we said at the beginning of the meeting, unfortunately, Lindsay is ill. He's suffering from the same problem as Phil Cunnington. He's got COVID and is not able to attend. So in his absence, I will present this item. Ruscombe is in fact the third parish in the borough in a matter of just a few months that's now ready to go to a referendum on its neighbourhood plan. And I want to thank Ruscombe parish councillors and Ruscombe residents for the work they put in on their neighbourhood plan, which will ensure that their community's views are properly taken into account in any future development in the parish. Parish councils adopted local plans have another really significant advantage. And this is a big incentive, I think, for parish councils to work on neighbourhood plans, because they allow the parish to receive an uplift in its community infrastructure levy payment from 15% to 25% of the levy money paid in relation to development within the parish boundaries. So if you don't have a neighbourhood plan, your parish receipt from CIL will be 15%. If you do have one that's been adopted, it goes up to 25%. So it's a significant incentive for parish councils wishing to provide facilities in their area and looking for funds to do so. Now, this evening, we're asked to agree the modifications proposed by the independent inspector, whose report is included in your agenda papers. And we're asked also to allow the modified plan to proceed to the next stage, which is a referendum of the residents of the parish of Ruscombe. And if that referendum is successfully passed through and the plan is endorsed by the good citizens of Ruscombe, then it is adopted. So unless anyone has any questions on the Ruscombe neighbourhood plan, I suggest we go straight to the vote on the recommendations on page 133 of your agenda. I don't see anybody desperately keen to ask a question, so I'm going to go to the vote on the recommendations on page 133. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. I'm sure Lindsay will be very pleased, so thank you. Okay, I think that concludes our business for this evening. There are no other items on our agenda, so thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you for those of you in the audience who have come, especially here this evening. That's good of you to have given up your time. Thank you to officers and members, and thank you for those who joined us online. And good evening to everyone. Thank you.